Tonight's story is from Aesop's Fables, and the story is called The Peacock and the Crane.
Where's the crane?
The crane is this one. It's a bird with long legs which walks in the water, and it's got a long beak to pick the small worms and things which are living in the mud under the water, and it walks in the water. Once there was a peacock who was extremely beautiful. As you know, peacocks have got lovely feathers on their tail, and when they want to show off, they put up their feathers to make a lovely display of feathers.
I wanted to want to shot that at
What are you saying?
that they wouldn't do the shot that.
When do they show the feathers? They mostly show their feathers like that either when they're frightened, or when they're angry, or when they're trying to show off to a lady peacock, to show how handsome they are. Once upon a time there was a peacock who was extremely beautiful.
Oh,
However, his beauty had made him so vain.
is that the beauty? Is that the crane? Is the beauty?
This is the crane, this is the peacock.
Where's the beauty?
Well, he's beautiful. Don't you think his feathers are beautiful?
Beauty. They look like beauty.
They've made him very vain. His beauty had made him so vain that he spent every day admiring his reflection in the lake. The peacock would strut backwards and forwards with his tail spread out like a large fan, like a huge fan. You see this, the feathers when they're spread out look like a fan, don't they? That you cool yourself down with.
But I have a fan, but actually it's broken, so I can use it.
Yes, it's a bit. So this is a bit like a big fan that you wave to cool yourself down. So the peacock would strut backwards and forwards, looking at his reflection in the lake. He marvelled at the brilliant blue of his elegant long neck, and the greens and golds of his magnificent tail.
The greens are gold.
Yes, you can see the gold bits on the tail and the green bits and the red bits. It's a very colourful tail, isn't it?
No, those are not it. Those are eyes.
They look like eyes, but they're actually decorations on his tail. That's how it looks. That's how the tail looks of a peacock. The more he looked at himself, the
Wow.
more the peacock simply...
There's lots of eyes. What? I saw eye. Beautiful. Something could be the eye. What?
Perhaps you could let me read on?
That is.
I know you're looking at the picture. You're looking at the peacock's feathers, which look like they've got eyes on them, but they're not eyes. They're just. It's not a stick. It's a pattern. It's a pattern on his. And those are feathers.
What is that?
And that's part of his tail. That's the inside of his tail. Okay, sit down in the bed and I'll read it to you. The more he looked at himself, the more the peacock simply couldn't believe how handsome he was. He thought he must be the most noble and majestic of all the birds. Don't touch the buttons, please.
Oh! You turkey dog.
Okay, I'm going to stop the story if you don't pay attention.
I don't pay attention.
Right then. He thought, excuse me, he thought, don't touch any buttons and sit down, please, in the bed, and then I'll tell the story. He thought that he must be the most noble and majestic of all the birds. I am surely the envy of every creature in the land, he said to himself. Do you want the rest of the story?
Yes.
Then sit still and pay attention. One day, while he was admiring himself in the lake as usual, the peacock met a crane. Here's the crane. It's white.
Oh, why?
And it's not.
Why is the crane?
This is the crane. It's not a crane like the cranes which were on building sites. This is a bird called a crane. It looks a bit like a crane because it's very tall, like a crane on a building site, and they got long legs. And maybe the building site crane is named after the bird called crane, or maybe the bird called crane is named after the building site crane. But certainly it's a very tall bird, very tall, with a long beak and long legs, which wade in the legs wade in the water.
Why?
Well, so it gets his fish.
So it's dirty.
Okay, can we finish the story? He's not paying very much attention. He's jumping around and being a naughty boy, and I can't tell the story straight without getting interrupted. One day, while he was admiring himself in the lake as usual, the peacock met a crane. The crane was a large and handsome bird, but he had plain feathers, not decorated feathers like the peacock. The crane had plain white feathers and strong wings for flying great distances in the cold weather. He was pale grey and white with black tips on his wings, and he was certainly not as dazzling or as beautiful as the peacock. "Good morning, peacock," said the crane. "How are you this fine day?" And the crane replied, no, not the crane, the peacock replied, I am very well, as you can see, crane," said the peacock, as he paraded up and down. His tail was fanned out as wide as it would go, so that the crane could admire it properly. The crane was impressed. This is the crane with the long beak and the long legs and the white feathers. "Your tail is one of the most beautiful sights I have ever seen," said the crane. He was being very generous to say such a nice thing to the peacock.
What are those?
They're decorations or patterns on the feathers.
What are patterns?
Pattern. This is a pattern on your eiderdown. You've got a pattern. And here's a pattern.
And this is
This is a pattern.
we can call it a decoration. This.
Looks like a decoration, yes. And the crane said to the peacock, "You must be immensely proud to have such lovely feathers." "I am indeed," said the peacock grandly. "Every day I give thanks that I am the most handsome bird alive. Look how my feathers shine in the sun. They are decorated with every colour of the rainbow. In fact, I think my tail probably has even more colours than a rainbow." The peacock turned slowly in front of the crane, his tail fluttering and shimmering. The crane nodded politely in agreement. The peacock's beauty was truly a sight to behold. Peacock continued boasting. "I am the jewel of the world's crown," he went on. "I am dressed in the robes of royalty. I might as well be king of the birds." The crane paused before replying. Because the peacock is being very vain, isn't he?
What's vain?
Vain is when you're very proud of yourself and you think you're the best. That's being vain. You think that everybody's looking at you, don't you? That's being vain. The crane paused before replying. "What you say is true," he said.
Daddy, is this like the girls in vain? They're trying to look for the giant. I'm in the giant to count the carrots.
I think it's something like that, but I can't quite remember that story. I've forgotten it. Okay, let's read on. I am the jewel of the world's crown, he went on. I am dressed in the robes of royalty. I might as well be king of the birds. The crane paused before replying. What you say is true, he said. I don't know anyone who would disagree that your feathers are the finest in the world. The peacock gloated at the crane's words and replied rudely, It must be hard for you, poor crane, to stand this close to me when you are so plain and dull. What an insult. That's very rude. Fancy calling the crane plain and dull. I know that peacock is beautiful, but he shouldn't say to the others that they're plain and dull. Even if it's true, he might think it to himself, but he should keep it to himself. That was very rude.
What was rude?
Well, it's when you say something which insults somebody else or hurts them. For example, if someone's quite concerned about being fat, you shouldn't say, you're very fat. They'd get upset.
What the fat?
Okay,
You're
let's
fat.
No, don't be, that's rude. So the crane replied, I may have plain feathers while you have the robes of a king, said the crane to the peacock, but my life is far richer. While you see beauty only in yourself, I see the beauty of the whole world around me. The peacock looked at the crane in disbelief, shocked that anyone could question his superiority. I do things you could only dream of. No, sorry, this is the crane speaking. I do things you could only dream of, continued the crane. By day, I travel for miles and miles to new lands where there are birds just as fabulously feathered as you are, and at night I fly so high I can almost touch the stars.
Who said that?
The crane. I can fly a bit too, said the peacock, blushing with embarrassment.
They flying high.
He is flying high.
And that's it. That's the planet Earth.
Yes. Perhaps you can fly, replied the crane, but can you fly over mountains and over oceans? Can you fly high above the clouds and warm your wings in the rays of the sun? The peacock went silent, while the crane continued to boast. Just because I am not as beautiful as you does not make me any less interesting than you. At last, the peacock had to agree with the crane's wise words.
That's the planet Earth.
With that, the crane began to flap his strong wings and took off over the lake. Peacock could only stand and watch while the crane flew off into the morning sun for another exciting adventure.
What's adventure?
Adventure is something which is going to happen, but you don't know what it is. So the poor, as you can see, the poor peacock cannot fly, and the crane can fly. Would you rather be beautiful with beautiful feathers but can't fly, or would you rather be white and plain and be able to fly over everything you want? What would you choose? Would you choose to fly, or would you choose to be handsome?
Choose to be fly.
I'd choose to fly as well. That would be fantastic. Think of all the things you could see if you could fly. Whereas if you could just walk like a peacock, you can't see anything.
Why?
Well, you can't go very far at all. This one, the crane can fly over the mountains, fly over the valleys, fly over the rivers, fly over the oceans, fly over the lakes, fly over the trees, and see so many things. Whereas the peacock could just waddle around and see almost nothing, just the things around him. But he is beautiful on the other hand. And that's the end of the story now.
Can I have a dinosaur in this book?
Okay, we're going to not stop telling another one on this one now.
What's Let's watch dolls.